Well, it's Wednesday, so let's go ahead and do this Why with One Stop thing. I'm so glad to have you joining me today. We're live streaming onto YouTube, so that always makes it full of adventure. And today we're going to talk about you're not party to the contract, things that agents can and cannot do when part of the transaction. I'm Sam Hayes. I have been a transaction coordinator for over 2 decades. I'm a licensed realtor, CAR certified CTC, forms trainer, notary, and just all around big nerd when it comes to talking about all the stuff related to transactions. I like to share my mission statement is that my job is to create a defendable, risk management focused, and well documented file in compliance with DRE, broker, and statutory requirements. Through the services I offer, I provide additional bandwidth to the independent brokers and agents I assist by freeing up their time and energy to focus on pursuing their business generation goals. And as always, as I always say, double check everything I'm about to share with you with your file checker and broker of record. So let's start with the whole big deal about everything. There are now three contracts with every transaction. We have our listing agreement, whereas the seller lists the property with an agent. That is one contract. Then we have a buyer now, as of state law, January 1st, AB 2992, as well as in compliance for the NAR settlement. And those two items kind of fit together like Tetris blocks. They don't really supersede each other, but I always go with the most conservative for anything. Figure you can't go wrong there. It's always better to be the most conservative with disclosures. So we're going to focus on what was most restrictive. So that's that buyer broker. That is to be signed per the NAR settlement prior to any actions as an agent, according to the AB 2992, as soon as possible, but prior to completion or execution of a contract. Then, so that's between buyer and buyer's agent. Seller list is on the listing side, seller's agent. Those are two separate contracts. That deals with the agents. Then we get into the purchase agreement. That's between the buyer and and the seller. Agents are not party to the contract. That's why you're not party to it. Agents only have certain things they are able to do within the purchase agreement. That's why we have these two other contracts that go through and explain and detail your relationship with your seller, or if you're working with the buyer, or even as dual agent, you would still have each individual contract. I know that comes up a lot now because we used to have dual agency written into the listing agreement and the commission for the buyer's agent written into the listing agreement, but that all changed with the settlement last year. So you need to be thinking of this, even if you're dual agent, you're still going to be representing that buyer's agent with that contract and that listing with the seller's agent. You may be the agent of record on the contract for both, but you're still going to have three contracts no matter what. I know that's something that comes up and everybody's still trying to wrap their heads around it because it's so different from what we've done for all these years. But it's really important because we want to stay in compliance with the NAR settlement to have that protection of the umbrella of the NAR settlement, as well as now state law here in California for any purchase agreement. Previously, it was only for residential 1 to 4. Now that's the NAR settlement, but the California AB 2992 is everything commercial, vacant land, all that fun stuff. So, with this basis in mind, we're going to move forward knowing that we are talking about how you are not party to the purchase contract. That one that's just between buyer and seller. Agents are not party to it. So, what is agency? Let's start there. Like, what do you mean I'm not party to it? I'm an agent. I'm agency. I have agency. Okay. You are acting as a capacity. It's an officer function of an agent, a relationship between a person, a principal, and that person's agent. So you are acting for them. You are helping to facilitate through which power is exerted and or is achieved. It established and engaged in doing business for another, doing business. We are helping with the purchase or sale. We are helping do business. We are providing services. It's administrative decision. We're not getting into that. So this is the overall thing about agency. You are acting to help them. You are acting as their agent. However, you are not the decider. You are not the one who goes, we're going to do this. I'm my client, my file, blah, blah, blah. No, we are here as an agent to represent our clients and provide them with information as a professional. It's a big mind shift and it helps people when we get a little heated and a little stressed on some of these files to remember how we're talking to people and what terms to use because it matters. Now, this is from CAR's risk management, and it's Q&A. I've got the link below. It is in CAR, but it's explaining why do we have these agencies or why do we have these agency forms, Sam? You're telling me I'm not party to this, but I'm having to sign all of this. What are you talking about? This is saying, hey, seller buyer, I'm going to work as your agent. I'm going to be part of this to help facilitate and get you through this. You were going to pay me a fee, and I'm going to act and bring my information, my professional education and understanding to the transaction. It also lets you know that in California, I can represent both sides. That is still something dual agency is still allowed. Now, again, we will have those three contracts no matter what, because you would already have had a relationship with that buyer, and then you bring them to your listing where you already had that listing with your seller. So you have to have those two contracts in place before you're helping get to the purchase agreement. That's why we disclose the agency. I'm letting you know I'm representing both of you, or I'm representing one or the other of you. But I am telling you that we have a relationship, and these are my duties to you. These are your duties to me. But you guys are going to duke this out in the purchase agreement. I may help facilitate that. That's the thing that people have to remember. We are here to help facilitate. We're here to create and get people moving. We are not the decision makers at all on this. We're here to get information. That's what the agency is. We're being an agent, we being realtors. When you look at the agency disclosure, this needs to be the first document for your listing agreement. This is your first document with your BRBC, your buyer broker agreement. And this is also your first document with the purchase agreement because you're acting as the agent, writing it up as a buyer's agent. It's letting you know that what they can say is, look, I'll only act for the listing agreement, listing side. I'm only acting for the buyer. Or I can work for both of you if you'd like me to, but we all have to talk about it. We have to say that we affirm that these obligations that we are going to be diligent and exercising reasonable skill and care in the performance of agent duties. Well, what are those duties? Those are providing support and education and information and guiding clients through a transaction that they may do 3 times a year in their lifetime, maybe, where when those of us that work in real estate, we live and breathe in this stuff and it's life changing. These are big, huge numbers, especially here in California. And these are dreams. And you may be working with the very first one of this person's family to have the opportunity to purchase a property. You may be working with somebody who's been like me. I'm third generation broker realtor in my family. I'm not a broker yet, but I'm third generation. We've had brokers and realtors that's what we do. You don't know their level of what their knowledge base is. So they're coming to you as the educated information professional to help guide them through the transaction. That you're going to be honest and fair dealing and use good faith. You are going to be acting like, hey, I want us both to win because look, bottom line is you're about to do a lot of work for an individual and you want it to be a successful close so that they get the win-win. Seller wants to sell, buyer wants to buy, and everybody's compensated for their time and the actions that they provide. We're going to disclose facts. We're going to share everything. Not our job as agents to be filters, not our jobs. We are here to go. This is what I've been told. This is what I know or don't know. And if you don't know, I'll help say these are some options. There are other individuals who can get that information for you. But we need to know that boundary, part of that agency. What do we know and what do we not know? What are we allowed to discuss and what are we not allowed to discuss? And we're not obligated to reveal either party any confidential information if it does not involve the affirmation of duty set forth. That gets into a whole thing about what is confidential information, what's not, and why we have so many different forms. But that's another file, and that's going through the market condition advisory and some other things. We'll do that on another video. But bottom line is this is saying, look, I'm going to work with you. You're going to work with me. We're working together as a team. I'm here to help facilitate obtaining the purchase that you want to make or the sale that you want to make. Now, this is pulled from NAR, and these are actual realtor fiduciary duties. If you are a real estate agent, you have not sworn, subscribed, done the membership. But bottom line, generally, there's some really good practice things. And the whole point of why we're here as the agents, not parties to the contract, but the agents on behalf of the party for the contract. We're loyal. We are acting in the principal's best interest to the exclusion of all interest. We're focused on taking care of our client. It's part of why dual agency is such a huge question, because at trying to be Swiss and in between the two things, it's kind of challenging. The duty of confidentiality. That's protecting information affecting your principal's bargaining power. You don't want to tip your hat. You don't want to share info that may not be of best interest for your client to share with the other side. You need to be able to use your bargaining powers. Obedience. We're going to listen to their lawful instructions. Now, lawful. Here's the thing. There's a time and a place where you've got to take a look at that. And if you have questions, that's what your broker of record, your file checker, your mentor, CAR legal, all of those places are around. You can always talk to, myself or somebody else. I'm going to redirect you to all of the above, paralegal, your broker, everybody else, but I will explain what I've seen. I am, as I said, I am all about conservative, very risk compliant files. And if there's even a question in my mind that it could be something that goes, well, why didn't you share that? Why didn't you tell that? I'm team disclose, disclose, disclose. Anytime you're getting into information about the property, we are past marketing. We are past look at those great windows and that beautiful view. We are down to the nitty gritty, and this is a purchase that an individual could be responsible for lifetimes that can impact other individuals and cause great harm. We've got to be aware and got to be transparent. So if somebody tells you to do something that's on the naughty side, we're going to say no, even to the point of losing funds, because your commission, while incredibly important and you should totally be compensated for all of your actions, your commission is not worth 9 months of litigation, lawsuit, and then losing that plus exponential amounts. The damage to your broker, the damage to your name, all of that. It's not worth it. So I am definitely team, let's make sure we disclose. If we are working with somebody who is not going to be along that lines of compliance, we're not working with them. Duty of disclosure, as we just talked about. I know this stuff, so let me share it with you. If your client knows something, we're going to share it with you. If somebody else tells you something, I'm going to share it. I will say, hey, the neighbor just leaned over the fence and told me there was a fire back here, but I can't tell, but that's what the neighbor said, so maybe we should find out. Any of those little tidbits, you can always cite it to the third party. I hearsay, overheard, and whatever. Those are things to be always shared, always communicated, and in writing, not verbal. You want to be able to go back and document this. With the files that I work on with my clients, I do a lot of times where if something's shared in the email, I will send it in DocuSign to have it also was received so that everybody can say, look, we actually saw this. We do have the electronic delivery between agents clarified, but if we're going to court, you got a good lawyer. They're going to be like, how do you know the buyer opened it without a read and received? So I want it signed. That's just a over glitter soapbox moment of mine. Duty of accounting. We got to keep tabs on all the money in the property. Where is everything? That's why we work with escrow. That's why we do not take deposits anymore. Back in the day when everybody was taking those and having to log it in and log it out of the trust logs, no. Part of why the contract was changed to automatically to wiring the deposits to help mitigate and reduce some of the issues that were coming up with trust funds and commingling. And that's a whole other video because it's a very scary dark rabbit hole of responsibility. The duty of reasonable care, that we are pursuing the principles of fair with standard expectation of competent professional. Be a professional. You are being compensated for the actions you are doing. You are acting as this agent. You are here to help facilitate the two parties to the contract achieving their end goal, sale and purchase. That's the bottom line. So you're here joining me today to learn a little bit more to be that professional that you're already working on. So I appreciate that and thanks for that. Okay, where is I think it's only when it's right here, So buyer's responsibilities and the seller's responsibilities. This is one of the things that becomes a problem. And reminding my clients, agents and brokers, you are not party to that contract. There are only certain actions you are responsible for. You are helping facilitate getting information, giving 3 different options of investigations, 3 different options for home warranties, 3 different options for NHDs, all of that fun stuff so that the buyer or seller can make their own educated decision. So what all are they responsible for? Well, okay, they need to pay attention. They need to protect their own interests. They've got to read everything. They can't just say, well, my agent told me. You need to read this. I always put please read and review on every single one of my DocuSigns because I was told many, many years ago, well, It will not, nothing will totally insulate you for anything here in California because we are the sue me state, as I like to joke. At least you can show standard of care and where it was reminded and was brought up to their attention. If legal or tax advice, we don't do that unless you are also an attorney and a CPA. God bless if you are, that's a lot of work. But you don't give that kind of information. We refer them to those professionals. We refer them to educated individuals. Title, escrow. It's why I will not send escrow documents for an escrow company in DocuSign. I need those questions to be able to be answered if a buyer or seller wants to know. That's where their funds are going. That could impact their taxes. I'm not educated in that. I'm not a title expert. I can read what's there, but I don't know the nuance the way a title expert will, excuse me. That's why we work with so many different types of professionals within a real estate transaction. There's so many pieces to this puzzle to get to the end game of the sale and purchase that we need to make sure that we have experts involved every step of the way for the clients. Again, part of the fiduciary, part of, as I've said on many of my other videos, we're building the team. You've got a team around you, even if you're a broker who's like one-stop shop yourself, you've got a team around you, and we're all here to back you up and keep you going because let's be real, the rest of us don't have jobs without agents. So that's why I want to make sure you're taken care of so you can go out and do what you've got to do. The other thing is you want to make sure we've said tax advice that you need to do diligence, and then they may get more disclosures depending on they may get another disclosure form. There may be multiple agents. We have the additional agents addendum. Anybody who has more than a casual relationship to present you with this disclosure form. So that's why you'll see the AAA, the additional agent addendum, just saying, look, this is part of my team. This is who's all working together. Again, this is about clarity of communication. It's about making sure everybody has the same managed expectation because we have that clear communication of what's going on. Conflict arises when expectations differ. Getting everybody on the same playing field from the start is what gets a smooth transaction done. Well, Sam, what does all of this have to do with us not being party of the transaction? And why are you going into so much detail? Because I want to make a really big point. You are an agent. You have agency. You are helping to facilitate the buyer and seller, the parties to the transaction. Yes, you do sign off on things. Yes, you do acknowledge because you are part of that. You've gotten this agency. You are working with them. However, you are not the decision makers. That is the seller and the buyer. Those are the decision makers because those are the parties to the transaction. And as we all know, we'll hear people say a lot, well, my client, your client, that client, blah, 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 blah. Here's the thing. It is in two different places. You are not party of the transaction. You're not part of the contract. So things that you are doing, your commission, paying TC fees, all those things, those need to be in the two contracts you are party to, the listing agreement and the buyer broker. Well, Sam, I don't understand. I mean, I'm signing this. What's going on? This is basically, again, why we have the three. You are being that agent for both, either or both. And this is reiterating again, you're not party to this. It also gives you protections saying, look, if something goes down and the seller didn't tell them, there's only so much I can do. If the buyer didn't said they had funds and made some fraudulent commitments, there's only so much I can do. So while this may seem limiting, there's protections in place as well for you as the agents and for the brokerage. It's making sure that everybody knows what are their responsibilities, what they're doing, that whole clear communication thing. And no, I can't beat that horse enough because it's so important. So I'm seeing this one a huge all the time now. As we all know, with the changes in what's happened with the NAR settlement and everything else, a buyer can ask the seller for a concession of a credit that they can then use as to pay the commission to their buyer's agent. The amount they have agreed on BRBC on RPA 3G3. It is not commission. I understand everybody's like, but it's the commission. They're right. No, seller is not paying the buyer's agent's commission. Seller is giving a credit to the buyer to pay that commission. Buyer will be responsible for that commission regardless of that credit or not, because buyer has that separate agreement that is directly between buyer and buyer's agent, the buyer broker agreement, BRBC. Now, there's a lot of different things that come into play here. Well, how do I give her credit? What do I do? Oh, escrow just wants an amendment. No, I don't care. Escrow's not reporting to the DRE. We are. And when these files are turned in, they get audited and they get flagged. And, right now, hopefully you've never had a DRE audit. Knock on, nobody's had one. Hopefully you have perfect files. They're chef's kiss. I hope they're amazing. Just because a lender tells you one thing or escrow tells you one thing, you're gonna want to verify with your broker of record, your file checker, and somebody else, car forms trainer like myself or TC you work with, that is educated in this to make sure we're documenting it properly. I understand a lot of times these can be in a time crunch. I understand everybody can be pushing. We got to take the 5 minutes to do it right. So what you're going to want to do is if you are reducing that credit amount, say now suddenly the seller says, okay, well, I'll give you this concession, but we're going to reduce also what I'm giving you as this credit here. You're going to note the 3G3 to be 2 apples or 3 bananas, but you are not going to say 3G3 commission to be 5 bananas. That is not commission. You just cite that amount, that credit is going to be something else. If you are an agent who are giving a credit, you're going to use the MTLA for the listing agreement, the MTBR, buyer representation agreement. You're going to modify that because remember in RPA 18 and 19, both the listing agreement and the buyer broker agreement are to be provided to escrow, our accountant, more or less, for about lack of a better word. So if you are changing now because you are reducing your commission, you are giving a credit, you are changing those two separate contracts. You are not changing the contract you're not party to. You're changing the contract you're party to because the contract you're party to is how you're getting paid. I hope that makes sense. So I'm trying to break it. I want to make sure it's broken down, but do not do addendums. I fight this all the time and make everybody nuts. Or I'll see right now, I have one of my transactions where they're like, well, the buyer's agent's commission to be. No, because the buyer's agent commission is not part of that contract. It's part of the BRBC. So the RPA has no jurisdiction over here on the BRBC. Now, the credit that is being given for the buyer to use towards that, that's a different conversation. That's why we just go right to it. RPA 3G3. Hope that makes sense. But it's very clear that we need to, if we're making changes, we got to make them to the right contracts. And I understand it's a change. It's completely different and stuff's starting to pick up and everybody's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I just want to get paid. I totally want to get you paid. So I probably also need to make a flow chart of this too, but that is the biggest thing is which contract are you party to? That's where you give the credit from. And that's what you modify. And that's what you give to escrow because escrow is getting it anyway per the RPA. That's how it all ties in. And then what are we doing about these credits to the client? When you're doing that, make sure escrow and your TC know and make sure your broker's okay with it. Also, is there enough room with the lender to give the credit? Just a little side note. Because we'll make sure this is documented correctly. That's what we're here to help you with, to make sure it's done correctly. You have all of us for support. So when agents go rogue or don't want to tell anybody, you got to remember the commission is the brokerages. The broker, ultimately, that's their commission. And then they're sharing it with you. You're acting as an agent for the broker. I mean, we got everybody acting for an agent for everybody else. Make sure you've checked with everyone before you start giving away commissions. It may be better to do a price reduction. It may be better to do some other things. You're going to want to check. Everybody's going to want to check tax implications, lender. There's many levels. It's not just a, hey, we're throwing a credit on here. We won't even get into documenting off the request for repairs. That'll be another video. But you got to make sure we've got it done right. Another thing I see happen a lot right now is agents, again, not party of the contract. Well, we're doing a notice before. Who is this we? You got a rock in your pocket? No. You need to have a conversation, explain to your buyer or seller, this is what happens with a notice to perform. Well, we're doing a demand to close escrow. Well, did they even remove contingencies? Is it appropriate? Should it be a notice to perform? Which one's the right one? But those are issued by the buyer and seller. I hear it all the time. Well, we're doing it. We're doing it. We're doing it. No. I'm going to talk to my client and see what they would like to do. And then you have the conversation and then you put it in writing so that they know the ramifications and potential impacts. And this could change the whole transaction and what it means. Also, when can you do it? You don't get to, I'm just giving them a 24-hour notice to perform. You don't get to do that. That is also, you got to pay attention to what's in your contract. What were you agreed to? I remember when it went from hours to days and suddenly we had 72-day notices to perform and 70, all the different time frames. Take a look at your contract. Explain the contract to your clients. I send out a welcome letter to all of my listings that has the RPA breakdown. It's a booklet you can get from CAR that I purchased that I forward to make sure that they have that for familiarity and start to break it down. They can start looking over this contract that's going to come to them. These are the things we're supposed to be doing. That's that fiduciary, why you're acting as an agent, bringing your intellect in, doing all that. That's what we're doing. So that's that's part of what's a big deal. Another one that comes up is TC fee. Well, if you're not party to the contract, how can you ask the client to pay for my service that is being I'm providing to you? Because I'm here helping you as the agent. We've got to make sure these are on either the RLA or the BRBC prior to going under contract. Why? Well, they've got to have a chance to say no, they don't want to pay it. They can't just say, well, now I'm stuck because if I don't sign this, I can't do the purchase. Or, well, I'm stuck, I don't want to pay that, but it's the only way I can get the deal done. You don't want to create any of that duress. You don't want to create any issue. It's a very transparent thing. If you were going to have a TC fee paid, verify all with your broker of record if they allow it, and verify with all the rest of the regs. But last time I checked, best way to do it is make sure it's fully disclosed ahead of time and very clear. But it's a dicey line you want to double check, especially in-house TCs, if you're working with an independent, your type of brokerage, all that fun stuff. We got to make sure they know. We can't just slide, oh, I talked to them about it. I can't prove you talked to them about it and they agreed to it before you went into that contract. We can do a modification to the buyer broker or the listing agreement during the contract. Do I like to do that? Oh no, no, no. I will give you static for it. I will definitely harass you about it and I will try and make you cry a little bit. I won't lie. A little bit, just a little bit. Because I'm worried I would it's my fee is not worth you losing your license over. And my fee is not worth a RESPA violation. Nobody wants it. I don't want that. You don't want that. So let's do it right. Let's keep that clear communication. Remember that conflict arises when expectations differ, but if we level the playing field from the start, it's not as big a problem. This is another one I get a lot too, is when you're ordering inspections, put them in your client's name. If you put it in your name, how do we know without having the client acknowledge receipt of that document that they, one, got to select the inspector? It wasn't just one you referred, because by doing that, if you're the one who calls it and then sends it over, you've more or less warranted saying this was somebody of value, this is somebody I endorse. That's a bunch of liability I don't want to take on. The best practice is always to suggest three different inspectors, three different home warranties, three different NHDs, three different of anything. You're going to want to make sure that you do that. So how can we do that though if it's in your name? How do I prove that paper trail without having the emails and everything else? If you have to, you can say agent four, put their name, whatever, but get your client's name on these reports. Get your names off these reports. You're not party to these contracts that these investigations are for. That is totally opening yourself up to huge amounts of liability. When I'm on the buy side, or excuse me, on the seller side, and if I see a buyer not the buyer's name on reports, I will kick it back and ask for the buyer signed copy. I want proof that they saw that. I want to make sure they saw that. If we have the same thing going with the seller, I will have the seller acknowledge the receipts and invoices as part of the disclosures and have them acknowledge and sign on those documents that they're aware that they're being shared, including with previous sale documents, that they are aware we are going to share the known history to the brokerage. All of this is to insulate and make sure everybody, same playing field. We know what's going on. Also, it helps to have that understanding. Disclosures, reports, investigations are history. They're informational, they're material fact. They are not marketing pieces. We want the good, bad, and ugly. The property is sold as is per the contract, per the RPA, that purchase contract. So whatever's known, that's as is. That's good, bad, and ugly. The more you can share, the better off you're going to be. Well, you were supposed to be done. So, can't be a Zoom call without something adventurous going on. Another one that comes up a lot of times is with the same thing about what you're doing and what are you doing, your AVID. This is the first page of the AVID. It reiterates that you don't go on the roof, don't go in the attic, don't go underneath. You are not a physical inspector. The AVID is because civil code requires the agent, who you are representing the client as the educated professional, walks the property. You've physically seen the property. You've made sure there is actually a property to be sold. You know, it's not just a shack that somebody sent you some fake photos on. And this is going through and you're giving general, like it's a hole. It's not a big hole, it's not a little hole. There's black, there's mold on the wall. You don't know that unless you don't know that. So be careful. Verify with your broker of record and file checker. Make sure that how there's AVID training, and I can do a video on it too. The AVID came from the AVI, which was a San Diego form that was created to help document this because the act of the walking through is what's required. The written down document is not required by the statute. But how do we prove you did it without that written document? And I know AVI, I know you all hate them. I know how much you hate them. Everybody hates them. But they are the only way to protect you from your civil code in the contract, purchase contract, required duty as the agent. Do your AVID, do it quickly. Remember also, side note, if you're on the listing side, you say CAVID, AVID to follow, and it's not part of the TDS, that TDS is not complete per RPA 14 till I've got all this, or yeah, the TDS is not complete without the AVID. So don't put it off. Do it as quickly as possible. Do it as cleanly as possible. Take your time, but get that in there because as soon as I see that, I'm just buying time. You're just helping me run out my clock if I'm on the buy side. I know everybody hates them. Everybody hates them. Seller's choice. I see this a lot. Seller's choice. Well, it's seller's choice. We don't care. Seller's choice. Is that fiduciary to your client? Because remember, we're still acting as an agency. Also, seller's choice, is that letting your client have all the choices and everything else they're supposed to do? Are they being able to have, as part of the contract, an active involvement? No. Are they going to defer to you because when's the last time somebody got an escrow company? It was when they bought the house 10 years ago. They don't know anybody, they don't care. Understandable, but you're still going to want to put in writing that you gave them three options. You're still going to make sure you facilitated, did your fiduciary duty of information and disclosure and giving them the option to steer the deal. Buyer and seller are our decision makers. We're not. So we got to make sure that they have an active say and we have it documented. So be careful with seller's choice. It is just a nightmare. And then it delays ordering the NHD if they hadn't ordered it with the listing, and the home warranty can take forever, and it's crazy making. So have the conversations. It's a good way to be talking with your clients if you don't know what's going on. When you're going to lunch, when you're showing properties, you can say, hey, I want to explain some of these pieces of what will be happening once we find the right home for you. Hey, these are some escrow companies I've worked with. I want you to do your own research so you can be ready when we are looking into writing an offer. These are some things about home warranties. Here's some natural hazard companies. Give your clients homework. Keep them involved and engaged. That way you are providing service and education the entire time. Okay. Can she find it? No, she can't. Yes, she can. No, did that part already. Oh, I had to doubled up. I was so excited about the commission thing. I wanted to make sure I shared it twice. My broker requires it. My broker requires it. Okay, well, one, your broker's not party. Again, we're agents. Two, is it statutory? Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. It's statutory. It's required by statute. Totally. Is it civil code? Okay, yeah. Well, then, yeah, we better do that. That's part of what's written into this contract. Did we write in the contract? Well, yeah, okay, it's part of the contract. We got to do that. It's on my broker checklist. Be careful. Just because you demand my broker wants it, does not mean if it's not part of the contract, it's not one of these other items that it has to be done. And again, I'm not going to close or we won't move forward or we're not removing contingencies. You're not part of the contract. Brokers' requirements are not part of the contract unless you wrote them in the contract. Be careful. That's crossing that line again that we're talking about. You're not party to it. You are not in charge of this. You can request, put it in writing. We can document, say, hey, they didn't provide this. Here's a blank copy. How do you want to proceed? Again, we are facilitating to the buyer and the seller. We are helping facilitate so that they can make the decisions and decide how they want to do this. But this demanding, well, my broker says, my broker wants it. That's great. I don't report to your broker. I report to a DRE audit, and per this contract, I'm in compliance. So just think it through. It's how we communicate. Again, that expectations you can ask early on. It may be easier to deal with. If we've already got a seller running late and suddenly you get a file checker goes, well, you don't have this form and it's not required. You may have a seller on a plane saying, pound sand, we're done, I'm out. And on the buyer side, did you do your due diligence for making sure you got all the info for the buyer? Something to think about. Definitely worth managing that and having a conversation early, getting your files checked early and doing all sorts of reviews. So, Sam, that was a lot. God, you talk a lot, Sam. Oh my goodness. I do. I talk a lot. I've got a crazy brain, but I wanted to get some bullet points back for you. Things are to remember. Let's start off with what's our fiduciary agents or fiduciary duty to the client as an agent? What are we starting with? The commission is between you and your client. Well, yeah, but we've got to get that documented on that contract. That's over there. That's why we have the listing agreement. That's why we have the buyer broker agreement. Well, I want to get the TC fee paid. Great, no problem. Have that conversation and put it on your contract with your client, your listing or your buyer broker. Well, contractual actions, those are buyer and seller only. Those are the guys that are party to the transaction. That's your notice to perform. That's your demand to close escrow. That's we're canceling. Like, no, you can't cancel until we do the right steps. Contingency removal. Are we delaying recording? What are we doing? There's only certain people that are allowed to do certain things because of their responsibility in the transaction and what they have. You got to pay attention to that. Pay attention to your verbiage, how you're communicating that with others, and what you're doing. Make sure you got your buyer seller names on the investigation estimates. Those are the people that are supposed to be doing that. That's their report. You may be helping get put in the order or giving the call, but you can have this so it's in their name because they're the ones paying for it. That's theirs. And your broker isn't my broker. So if it's needed, great, let's make it part of the transaction. There are different places to put it so it does not become an addendum, so it's not required, but also you got to be aware of what the lender may want to see. So pay attention to that. Have a conversation early on if you've got some interesting requirements and understand that sometimes what is for one brokerage may not be for another. And it's part of what's so great about this industry. Within certain framework, we can all kind of do files the way we want to. And that's part of the individuality and how we can meet different clients' needs at different times. Your brain exploded? My brain's kind of exploded. It's a lot. It's a lot of good stuff, but I think it's important. Quick last things, don't over investigate. Review the BIA, the SBSA, the AVID. Help get them in the right direction, but you can't be the one pulling permits. You can't be the one doing all the due diligence. You've got to be careful about how much you cross that line. We all want to be of great service. I always want to be of great service to my clients, but there's a line. And we've got to have direction. We got to have documentation of who directed what when. Protect yourself. That's where we overstep. We get in that gray area. I don't need 9 months of litigation, and I don't think you do either. The other big one, make sure your BRBC is correct. Do not do it for longer than the 3 months because it's 3 months, not 90 days per the statute, the AB 2992. And that's one of the issues that's still kind of in flux right now because there's a concern. If it's not correct, seller doesn't have to give that concession for that commission credit to the buyer to pay you. So suddenly you might be without funds. And that we're all working way too hard to do that. So don't do that. We don't want to do that. What's upcoming? Well, it's a very exciting week next week. I have count them, two training classes that I will be in right before I come and join you. Actually, three. I'm going to do one for my brokerage as well. So I'll have three classes before I come talk to you about all the great, fresh, hot off the books. I'm literally coming out of one of my classes to do my video. Then I will take the week to get it nice and tidy. So we'll have lovely slides that I know you're enjoying that we're doing. And then at the end of the month, as I always do, it's a recap of what went wrong and how we fixed it. All the little nitty gritty in the field stuff that doesn't get talked about because you don't think about it till it happens. So I've been recapping those monthly for a while now because it helps me to understand and share. Because if you can teach it, then you usually know it. So moving forward, it won't be a problem. As always, I appreciate you joining me and being here today. I will talk about that stuff till I'm blue in the face. I love it even when my brain's exploding. Please like, subscribe, follow, share, all the things I'm supposed to tell you to do. Click the link below. I now have, this will be the 99th video. I'm so excited on my YouTube channel. I'm planning on trying to get to 200 by the end of the summer, including my shorts. Thank God the shorts count because they're little. What's the topic you'd like to hear about? I'd love to hear about it in the comments or feel free to give me a call anytime, 619-993-7264. Email me at sam@onestop-tc.com. Again, my name is Samantha Hayes. This was Why with One Stop. You are not party to the contract. Verify all with the broker of record of the file you are working on, as well as your file checker, but I'm here to help any way I can. Have an amazing day. Thanks for joining me.